Welcome to the Get Out Debt Guy podcast. I'm Steve Rode, the old, original, and some might say well-aged Get Out of Debt Guy.
A fine wine.
And I'm here with the newer, shinier, and less likely to yell at clouds version of Damon Day. Say hello, Damon.
Hello, Damon.
Today we're tackling a question that's been quietly eating away at a lot of families, something Damon and I have talked about for years. Is going to college still worth it? Or is it just some outdated boomer advice that needs to be left behind with floppy disks and fax machines? We're going to look at the numbers, the debt, the opportunity cost, and most importantly, what actually makes financial sense for someone starting out today. Because the world has changed. The price of a degree has skyrocketed, and meanwhile, there are trades, tech schools, certifications, and entrepreneurial paths that don't come with six figures of student loans chained to your ankle. So if you got a kid wondering whether to go, and you're thinking about going back yourself, or you're just trying to figure out where the smart money move really is, hey, this one's for you. Let's get into it because, Damon, you've got an opinion about this.
I've got, a lot of opinions. And I think, a big reason is because I'm kind of going through it right now, right? My oldest, we're going through these life transition periods. My oldest just graduated high school.
Yep.
My middle son's going to be a junior, and tomorrow we're going to the sixth grade promotion for my daughter. She's moving on to junior high, but it just kind of has brought it forward for me because my son's going to be going to a local community college. That's what he wants to do. Mm-hmm. And I want to do this podcast today because I want to let parents know that it's okay to not have your child go to a 4-year degree right out of high school.
It almost sounds sacrilegious to say something like that. Like you got 3 heads. You don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Yeah, and that's why, go ahead.
No, but the numbers and the facts don't lie.
Yeah, and I think to me, the biggest thing is parents need to be kind of given permission that it's okay. You're not a bad parent. We've just had this ground into us since from when I was a kid. Like, your kid has to go to college, otherwise they're a loser. They're not going to be successful or whatever. Mm-hmm. And as a parent, you want to do what's best for your kids, right? And so parents just feel like, well, my kid wants to go to school, so they need to go to school. And, it's easy. I'll just get some student loans because we maybe don't have the money to pay for it.
Right.
And parents, you need to step back and really look at all the options. And unlike Dave Ramsey's advice, which he thinks it should be applied to everybody equally, no matter what it is, it's right. Dave's way or the highway. College is something that should be evaluated on an individualized basis. I've got 2 boys. I mentioned my one that just graduated high school and one that's a junior. 2 very different kids, very different interests. My oldest is more of he got a programming mind. He's very artistic. My middle son is very sports oriented and very likely going to get a scholarship to go to a nice school with baseball. And so they're going to be on 2 very different paths. And you have to look at your kid as an individual and don't just start with the default is, well, we're going to college, right? That shouldn't be the default. The default is you graduated high school. What would you like to do with your life? That's where you should start.
Yeah, that's the big difference because I'm the boomer in this relationship. And the difference is that when I went to college, you could actually pay for it as you went. And today, we're asking 17-year-old kids to make a commitment to, like $100,000 worth of debt that's going to drag them down for the rest of their life. And then we rely on schools and their financial aid offices to seal the deal and get us the loans. We're not thinking. Now, something that Damon and I have talked about is this idea of, hey, if you got a 17-year-old and they don't necessarily know what they're really passionate about, what you're willing to invest $100,000, in their education for, consider this. Let them take 2 years off After high school is the best time to do it. You can still live with mom and dad, but you can have a purpose. And there's a difference in the amount somebody earns over their lifetime if they have a college degree or they don't. But Damon, these numbers are not going to blow your mind. But somebody out there, they're going to go, what? Because if your kid takes 2 years off, they could work doing one of the side hustles Damon has talked about, or working at a store or something else. But for those 2 years, if they deposited just 19 grand each year, that's after they paid you rent or whatever, if they could make more than $19,000, deposit that for 2 years and let it grow in a stock index fund, it would outpace the difference what they would earn by having a college degree in 45 years without making any additional deposit. Those 2 years of figuring yourself out and making those $19,000 deposits would be worth about $1.6 million.
Yeah, how often do we hear that statistic? It's been thrown around for 30 years, and it's never changed. Where they say college graduates on average earn $1 million more over their lifetime than non-college graduates.
Yeah, but there's the rub.
That's been thrown out there for 30 years.
Well, let me give you some. I'm the statistic guy in this relationship also.
Otherwise known as the boring old guy.
Yeah, that's because I'm the boomer.
You and your facts, Jack.
So listen to these facts. Only 64% of students who begin a bachelor's degree program complete it within 6 years. The completion rate varies by institution, 63% at public institutions, 68% at private, and only 29% at the highly marketed for-profit schools. Only 29% of students that take on the highest tuition get their degree in 6 years. 33% of all students drop out of college, 41% graduating only within the regular time frame. So if you factor in the non-completion rates, about 36 million Americans have some college education but no degree. So they just got the debt and no benefit.
I have so many clients that have, 6-figure student loan debts that don't even have jobs that require a degree, and and that's even the ones that have degrees, and a lot of them don't even have the degrees, but they still have the debt. So I know, parents, you want to help your kids, they want to go to this school or that school, and their friends are going here, and they're going to go out of state, and it's going to be fun. You look at it and you go, okay, well, I'll co-sign these student loans for them. And not only are you screwing yourself, but you're screwing your kid's future as well. Like what Steve talked about, they don't even have to necessarily take 2 years off. They can go to a local community college.
Yeah.
If they just don't want to take time off. And again, every situation is different. So we're not saying no kid should graduate high school and go to a 4-year school. That's not what we're saying. We're saying take a look at your individual circumstance, your individual situation, and maybe undo this thinking that they're not successful if they don't immediately leave the house after high school. If you want to do right by your kid and they don't know exactly what they want to do and have a plan to do it, rather than sign for student loans for them, the best thing you can do is allow them to live in the house longer. 20, in my opinion, 25 should be the new 18 with the way the economy is. You want to give your kids a head start in life. Let them earn money and live rent-free, or maybe you charge them some rent, whatever you need to do. If they're paying you a little rent, if you're in a tough financial situation and you got retirement looming around the corner and you don't have anything saved, allowing your kids to stay home and work and help pay some of those bills could help you actually start to accelerate some retirement savings rather than you just putting yourself on the hook for more debt, right, when you should be saving for retirement. So, your kids can stay home, go to a community college, get an associate's degree. They may have a good idea of what they want to do when they graduate. They go to a community college, work on an associate's degree, and completely change their damn mind within 2 years of what I thought I wanted to do when I was 17 is not what I want to do now that I'm, almost 20 or whatever. right? And sometimes that they might get that associate's degree and they realize they're done. That's all they need. There's plenty of careers out there that you have an associate's degree, you're good to go. You don't need a 4-year degree.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes experience is worth more than a degree. But here's the thing about the degree that often gets missed is that not everybody that starts completes. And the benefit of the degree is generally obtained by finishing. And this fact melts my mind. Of students that started school but never completed, and that's, millions that we've talked about, after 7 years in repayment for whatever student loans they had, more than half owe more than the original loan because of accumulating interest.
Yeah. Yeah. I literally have clients that have been paying on student loans and combination of forbearance or whatever for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
And they still owe 6 figures. And they're nearing retirement. And they're still like, how am I ever going to finish paying off my student loan from the early 90s?
Well, it's
crazy.
The average cost of attending a 4-year college in the United States is almost $40,000 per student per year. That includes books, supplies, and living expenses. So, that's a lot of money. And we know that most students are completing their degree in 6 years and not 4. But here's the thing that we don't think about, we don't talk enough about, is trade schools or vocational schools. So the average cost of attending that 4-year school, like almost $40,000, the average cost of going to a vocational or trade school and learning a special skill is $15,000 and generally takes less than 2 years.
And you can make $15,000 door dashing while you're going to school.
Yeah, you could pay for your whole degree.
Yeah, you don't have to. I think the default should be for parents figuring this out with their kids. How do we do what you want to do with no loans? That, to me, that should be the default. That the loan should be the absolute worst case scenario, and I don't want to say never considered, but it should not be the first option. If you don't have enough money to think of it like this, would you pay $160,000 for your kid to go out of your pocket? Just write a check. Forget about a loan. Out of your pocket. Would you cut a check for $160,000 for your kid to go to this 4-year school? Maybe. Maybe if he was going to be a doctor or a lawyer, or that was your alma mater, and there may be situations where that makes sense. But for most people, you can pay $40,000 to go to this 4-year degree where your child can find themselves and figure out what they want to do while you're spending $40,000 a year. Or you could say, hey, look, you don't know exactly what you want to do yet. Stay home, save money, earn some money. A couple local community colleges around here that, my son's going to go to a local college that's less than $3,000 a year. He's going to live at home.
Amazing.
That's the other thing. You send your kid out of state. Money. Yeah, you send your kid out of state. So now not only is the tuition higher, now you've got room and board because he's not local, he's not home. And then, you might be taking trips out to that college because you want to visit your kid. You're not just going to ship your kid off and not see him for a year.
Right.
So these are all things that a lot of parents don't consider, or they say, well, we'll get that student loan. And now
but Damon,
the apartment is rolled into that, and the food and all living expenses. And that's how these kids end up graduating with, $250,000 in debt and maybe don't even have a degree.
But Damon, the thing that we hear most often is, my kids got to go to school because they'll make more in their lifetime. Well, let's look at the facts again. Men with bachelor's degrees earn approximately $900,000 more in lifetime earnings than those with high school graduates, only, high school degrees. Women typically make $630,000 more over their lifetime. Now, if we can rewind our brains for a second, remember we started by saying that high school kid can take 2 years off, and over their lifetime, if they saved that money for those first 2 years, they'd have about $1.4 million. They'd have $500,000 more than that college degree lifetime earning.
And not only that, we're talking about $1.6 million, but only working at a high school level type job for 2 years, and that's it.
And never making another deposit.
Yeah, when you're talking about college, graduates earning more, earning that's earned income,
right?
900,000. And the other thing is, you can find stats to justify any argument you want. I would counter that argument with, did they earn the extra 900,000 because of the college degree, or did those type of people potentially earn that extra 900,000 because in the past, kids that typically went to college and completed their degree have certain attributes that maybe kids that did not attend college don't have. Maybe they're harder workers. Maybe they're more driven. Maybe they come from more affluent families that make it easier to go to college. And those affluent families have more connections.
That's true.
There's a lot of reasons why somebody with a college degree may earn more money over their life. But you can't deduce then that the only reason they earn more money is because they have a degree. That just might be, and they happen to have a degree. There might be other reasons why they earn more money.
And not all degrees are equal. A bachelor's in philosophy or English or dance or, underwater basket weaving, as you always say, is not a high income earner like engineering or computer science or something else.
Yeah, like I've talked about it before, but my son, he wants to get into video production, and he's very artistic, and that's the kind of stuff he likes to do. Complete opposite of my sports oriented son that wants to play baseball 24 hours a day. Very different goals. Well, he's going to be going to a specific community college that has the electives and the type of classes that he's interested in, because he doesn't know exactly what he wants to do. But he's going to live at home. We've already been going out. He's still getting his license. He doesn't have his license yet, so we go out together, and he's really into DoorDashing and doing Instacart, and it's a perfect little job for him. It's completely flexible. We've got him set up with an Acorns account. He's got a Roth IRA going. He's very diligent about all the money that he earns. Once a week, he gets his income. He puts 30% of whatever he made in his Roth IRA. He puts 30%.
And he's excited about it.
Yeah, and he's bugging because I have to go with him. That's the problem. He doesn't have his license yet. So, I'll be at the end of the day just exhausted. Be like, hey, Dad, we going to go out driving? And I'm like, yes, great. Yeah, let's go out. But he's also getting his hours behind the wheel to become a better driver. So we're, instead of just going out and just driving around aimlessly, he's earning money while he's learning how to drive and get his license. So by the time he's going to college at the end of the summer, he'll have his license, be driving himself to school. It's only about 30-minute drive from the house. He can live at home, no bills, and he can do DoorDash and Instacart and Walmart delivery, and he can easily earn $2,000 a month, super part-time, and all of his school will be paid for. And then he'll be building up that retirement account. So like you said, he can do that easily for 3, 4, 5 years until he figures out what he wants to do. He got 2 years at the community college, kind of figured out, get some experience there, then maybe go on to complete a bachelor's degree, or maybe decide he doesn't need that and just get into a specialized course or whatever it is, or maybe get into a apprenticeship or something. At one point he talked about maybe you can get an apprenticeship with Disney. Move out to California. I got family out there. He can live with family out in California. He likes to do that, graphic design and all that kind of stuff. But the point is, he's 18 and he doesn't know exactly what he wants to do. It would make no sense to send him off to an out-of-state 4-year school where he's all by himself, all these new bills, and now we're shelling out $30,000 or $40,000 a year, which I'm not going to do that. So what would you do? Oh, you're going to take student loans. So then if we do that, now he's 23 and he's graduated. Maybe he's got a good job, maybe he doesn't, but now he's got $150,000 that he's starting in debt, that he's starting out life owing, versus the way we're doing it. By the time he graduates, he'll have, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. Well, actually, no, he'll have more than that. He'll have potentially $100,000 by the time he graduates. If
he'll be worth a few million.
Yeah, so instead of being $150,000 in debt, he'll have $150,000 in his investment in his retirement accounts because he's been living at home the whole time, basically mooching off of us, which if you want to help your kid, that's going to help your kid. Let him mooch off of you a little bit longer. Let him graduate with $150,000 in the bank, and then let him go figure out, where he wants to get a job. And then you can leave that money in the account, and he will be a multimillionaire by the time he retires if he never even thinks about it for the next
and
40 years.
you know who makes more money than the kid that took 6 years to complete his degree because the school was dragging it on and it just cost more money? The person that's making more money, it's your damn plumber, your electrician, your CNC machine operator, your robotics technician. They went to school quickly. They got skills. They got certifications. And then they went to work and built experience that's worth more than anything else.
30 years ago, college degree was special, right? Like, oh, you're special. You're going to earn, you deserve more money and you've got this specialized knowledge. These days, a bachelor's degree ain't special, right? There's nothing special. What's special, like Steve said, is the guy that can fix your plumbing, that can work on your car, get your truck running again. Now the guys that actually have the old school skills, those are the ones that are in demand because there's so little of them still around because everybody's shifted to, I have to have a degree. So you're just one of millions with your 4-year degree competing for the same jobs.
Especially if your degree is in English, philosophy, dance, or something like that.
Yeah. You don't want to be amongst millions of people with the same skill set competing for a finite number of jobs. You want to be in the camp of there's a lot more jobs, there's a lot more demand for what I have than there are people that have the skills to service them. And that's why you've got your electrician driving that nice paid off lifted Chevy Silverado.
Well, here, let me give you, I just looked these up because I was curious. So lifetime earnings. So if you have a career that's 45 years, lifetime earnings for a plumber, about $3 million. Lifetime earnings for a CNC machine operator, about 2.5. And for a robotics technician, $3.2 million. That's nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah. And you don't have to go into a huge chunk of debt just to have a chance at it.
Well, let's talk about the ramifications of the student loan debt. The people that you deal with. You've had people that have died. Oftentimes, I remember one story where the debt collector was yelling at this guy over student loans, and you were afraid that he was going to stroke out.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. It was actually the grandfather of one of my clients, and these were private student loans, and the grandfather was the co-signer. And this collector was just an absolute asshole. And the grandfather was not in a position to be able to pay it, and they didn't have the means to be able to pay it. But this debt collector was just relentless. And the poor guy actually legitimately was on the phone with the collector one time, and he hung up, ended up having to call an ambulance. His wife called the ambulance, went to the hospital. Ended up he had a heart attack because of this. Like literally hung up the phone and was like, I'm not feeling good, and went to the hospital, was having a heart attack. And of course, I called the collector and raised all hell, and they stopped calling him after that. But yeah, and it was just I think if you go back into the Internet archives, I'm sure you can find, unless my memory is failing me, but I swear back in the day, Dave Ramsey used to call student loan debt good debt.
Yeah.
And I could be wrong on that, but I think he did. Now, I don't blame Dave Ramsey for that because that was the thinking at the time. Dave Ramsey doesn't say it's good debt anymore. He says the same thing we're saying. Do not get student loans. Even he realizes, how bad they are. The student loans are not good debt. They should be avoided at all costs. And honestly, the ease of which you can get student loans, in my opinion, is what has taken the guardrails off of this whole thing. Because if there was no student loans, families would have to get creative. They would have to really work for it and want it. Like they would have to be committed to, okay, my son wants to be a doctor. How are we going to figure that out? They wouldn't just, I'm going to sign here. I'm just going to go to Princeton or whatever, right? Or you can't be a doctor unless you've got, a 5.0 GPA and all those extra credit AP classes or whatever. You had to work for it. You couldn't just, I'm a C student and we can sign this form and I'll find a college that will let me in and take my $20,000 a year.
Right.
But maybe I don't have the, really what it takes to be successful. I'm just getting by in high school, getting C's. Maybe the person that's just getting by in high school, getting C's, doesn't mean they're going to be a failure at life. It just means school might not be their thing.
Yeah, give them some space.
Yeah, getting into a 4-year degree might not be that student's forte. Maybe they're really good at plumbing or fixing cars or whatever, and they hate studying. They don't like any of that stuff. So spending $150,000 to force them to do it for 6 more years is probably not going to turn out too well. So the big takeaway on this is every situation is different. Sending your kid to college right after high school should not be the default. Getting student loans should not be the default. That doesn't mean you're a bad parent. It doesn't mean you're not supporting your kids. In fact, to the contrary, I think it means you're a great parent. You're making sure you're not setting up your kids to fail at life by having student loans hung around their neck because your kid is 17 years old. All they know is what they've learned in the last 17 years, and all their friends are talking about this school and that school. And that's
the best party school.
And we're going to go out on the coast. So you're going to be the bad guy. No, I don't think that's a good idea, son. Here's why I don't think you should. But that's being a good parent, and allowing them to stay home and stay local for a couple years will not only help them in life, but if you're struggling financially right now too, especially with debt or whatever, it can help you as well. So we might need to start getting back to kind of old school. We don't think about it in this country as much anymore, but having extended family, living together a little bit longer, having the family kind of help each other out. That's not a bad thing.
Well, you talked about default. So the largest amount of debt that is owed for student loans is federal student loan debt. And, we had the pandemic, and then there was forbearance, and then, a whole bunch of stuff. You got kids now that are graduating school that have never made a student loan payment, and people from beforehand that had a bunch of years off here. But the Department of Education has ended that gravy train because about 195,000 borrowers who haven't paid their student loan bill for at least 9 months got a 30-day official notice in May, and beginning in early June are going to start having their wages and everything else garnished. Now, later this summer, the Department of Education said all 5.3 million defaulted borrowers will get their 30-day notice, and then they will get administrative wage garnishments and start having their wages docked over loans they haven't paid in years.
Yeah, I mean, we're 5 years out from when the pandemic started in early 2020. And then, so if you back up, and so anybody that went into, college in 2016 or later, most of those people, because you're not paying your student loans when you're in school. So if you started college in 2016, 2017, 2018, by the time you got out, even some kids in 2014, 2015, if they were taking 6 years, by the time you got out, we were in this pandemic forbearance. So you got out, your loans would have been due, and they weren't. And then you had this 4 or 5 years of life of no student loan payments due, right? So this has been a decade since you agreed to pay this money.
Yeah,
and
you've never. What happened while those payments were not due? The interest.
They got a couple of years of no interest in the heart of the pandemic, but
right.
After that, it started again. But my point is this: you have essentially a generation almost. I don't know quite a generation, but at least what do they call a millennial and a boomer? They're not generations anymore, but what do they call that? This is not like
I don't know where you're going.
The difference between a millennial and a Gen Xer. I guess you call it. Anyway, you got a decade worth of people here that don't know the pain of a $1,500 bill for your student loan, right? It's just something that's been floating out there, haven't had to deal with it. But now imagine...
And their lives expanded to fill their income.
That's what I was going to say. So imagine you graduated school in 2019, you got your forbearance, then the pandemic hit, and now you're, what would you be now? You'd be, 26, 27 years old, right? Maybe you're now married, you've got a couple of kids, you've got a decent job with your degree, and maybe you're making $80,000 a year, which is like the new poverty these days. So you're making $80,000 a year, and you got your mortgage payment, you got your car payments, and you got no savings because you've got no money because food is out of control. And now, all of a sudden, Uncle Sam's coming and knocking, and your payment is $1,500 a month. Imagine that.
Yeah. And there's another flip side to this because of all the changes that have happened. There are some opportunities for you to get your loan out of default, out of wage garnishment. However, and Damon, you can attest to this, the system is now so clogged with inefficiencies, or trying to get someone on the phone, or trying to get a rehabilitation approved, or trying to get your paperwork in is more complicated now than it's ever been.
Yeah, it's a nightmare with all the, the different servicers closing, going out of business, getting out of federal student loans, shifting over here, all the different, programs changing with different administration. One administration comes in, we got all these different programs, different administration comes in. No, some of those programs aren't going to go. Some of them will be fine. Some of them, we're going to have different ones. I mean, you don't want to get in bed with the federal government. Trust me. You do not want to be, because that $1,500 bill, I'll get on an IBR. Okay, fine. Maybe you can get on an IBR. Maybe we cut that payment down in half or something. Now you're only paying $700. You still don't have room in your budget guaranteed for the $700. But now you've got some deal with the federal government for the next 25 years that if you pay a certain amount of money that you have to recertify every single year based on your income goes up, you get married, you get a divorce, you have an extra kid, whatever it is, every year you got to let the government know, here's what I'm making, please don't kick me so hard in the nuts, or whatever it is. And then you're hoping 25 years from now that if you follow all the rules that they're going to forgive the debt. You're hoping. And we could just see in the last 10 or 15 years how many different programs have come and gone.
Oh, they've all changed and gone and whatever. It's amazing.
And we're supposed to make plans based on that. So you mentioned I've had clients that have actually passed away with these student loans. And I have clients where, and I wish I was joking, but I'm not, where they're in a situation, especially with Parent Plus loans, where we're essentially putting together a strategy to minimize or eliminate what they have to pay now so they can maximize their retirement, because these are Parent Plus loans. These people are getting ready to retire. They don't have retirement. They can't afford these loans. They're never going to pay them off. So we are trying to strategically avoid payment long enough to where by the time they have to start paying, they're going to be on a fixed income. They'll be retired. Yeah. We want to maximize how much they can put away for retirement. We don't want to default. We're not defaulting. We're just, everything is above board with forbearances and deferments and things like that. But then the end goal is literally you will statistically most likely pass away before you get to the point where the loans would even be potentially forgiven anyway. Yep. And that would save you from having the tax burden of those loans getting forgiven, because you couldn't pay the damn student loans. So even if you get it forgiven, now the IRS, again, unless things change, will come knocking going, okay, you don't have to pay the $250 back, but that forgiveness was now a taxable event, so you got to give us $85.
Right.
And you're going to go, I couldn't even afford the $500 a month payments. I'm on fixed income right now. Where am I supposed to get the $85,000 in this forgiven debt income? Yeah. So that's why if you pass away before that event, it's actually better, as morbid as that sounds. From a straight financial standpoint, I have clients that are like, okay, so if I pass away before that happens, my family, now the loans die with you, the federal loans, they die with you. So at least there's some silver lining that kids won't be responsible for these loans, these federal loans, if you pass away. I mean, it's ridiculous. Bottom line is, don't get student loans.
All right. So the bottom line to summarize all of this is before you even think about, hey, school's a good thing, I need to go, we've just given you a bunch of alternatives. Is somebody dying in your house?
My freaking Maltese, dude. I had to meet you and yell at her. She's howling. Oh, jeez.
So the bottom line is, hey, we've given you a bunch of options. We've given you options that can make you wealthy in your kids wealthy in their lifetime without jumping first into school. Just thinking. We'll do the math. And if you ever have questions about this stuff, or somebody who's drowning in these loans, you can always reach out to Damon. You can find him, DamonDay.com, and Damon can save your ass.
I can save. That's what I do. I'm an ass saver.
You're an ass saver. All right. Well, so to summarize this from your point of view, what would you like to share?
Well, I think I already did a pretty good job, but the biggest takeaway for me is parents, it's okay to take a step back and really have a good, honest conversation with your kids. College is not just the automatic way to wealth anymore. In fact, it can be the exact opposite, and it's okay for kids to graduate, take a year or two off, don't go to school at all, figure out what they want to do, maybe, get an apprenticeship, learn a trade, get a job, do some DoorDash, do some Instacart, go to a community college, live local and save money. The best help you could give your kids between 18 and 25 is to help them minimize or eliminate their bills, take whatever money they're earning and put it away. That will be more help. That will go much further to allowing them to become a multimillionaire than any damn college degree ever would.
So let me give you an update before I say goodbye. We did a show, I guess it was 2 months ago now, about acorns, something like that. And I've been rounding up my purchases like we talked about on that show and depositing $50 a week in my account. And right now, starting from zero, my balance is $708 and it's got a 9% return.
Nice.
So,
and that's including the pandalirium, the stock market was crashing, and like, as long as you don't sell, you're fine.
Right.
Just
we
don't
talked about that
sell.
at the time. Everyone was panicked because of the stock market, and we were saying, "Wow, it's a great time to buy."
Get more in. Yeah. The market's down. Sweet. Let's shove more into it.
Yeah. So, just think it through before you just have a knee-jerk reaction about college is a good thing. Got to do it.
Yeah.
All right. In closing, Damon, I want to tell you one little short story. So when I graduated from high school in 1977, long before you were born.
No, I was born in 1977, bro.
Oh, okay. Well, what month were you born?
It's December. So you were a college graduate before I came into this.
Yeah. No, I was a high school grad. Yeah.
Oh, high school grad. You're not that old.
Yeah. No. So I remember standing in line at school and overhearing a conversation, two kids in front of me. So where are you going to go to school? I'm going to University of Florida. Well, why? Oh, they got the best parties. So that sums it up.
Yeah,
be a parent to your child.
But in 1977, that kid could have gone to Florida, got a job part-time at the damn supermarket, and paid for his degree at the University of Florida. That's the difference. And he could have still been partying all weekend.
In 1977, for me to go to my local community college was $50 a semester.
I thought you were going to say they would pay me. Please come here. We need students.
All right, Damon, until next time, I will see you.
Peace.